Cue awkward silence. Here we go. Nailed it. Morning, everyone. I sound like a husky old man because I am old, and I've got a cold, so that's great. Welcome, and I hope everyone has had a great fishy week. Yes, we'll start by talking about what's happening in everyone's rooms or fish tanks or whatever. We probably should also start with the extra person who's here as well, with a bit of an introduction and why she's here, because there's a very obvious reason for that. So Rebecca, I don't actually know Rebecca either, just that she knows lots of stuff and she has a website. And she uses fancy words that I can't pronounce in her name, usually in the comment section. So Rebecca, do you want to do a quick introduction for everyone? And then we can get into our normal stuff.
Okay, so my name's Rebecca. I have the username Freshwater Ichthyology that no one can pronounce, but it's quite a fancy word anyway. And I also have the Scientific Fish Keeper website, not to be confused with other websites with similar names. But my background, I'm a fish biologist, ichthyologist, but also I'm an aquarist. I've been fish keeping since I was 10. And I've worked in the trade as well in the UK in 3 different stores and independent. One I say is semi-independent, has had like 6 stores, which isn't that many. And then I worked in a chain one with a lot more. I think it's got 50 stores. But I specialise and study as part of my PhD the evolution of lower carids catfishes, so they're known as plecos or L numbers or whiptails, all of that lot. As part of my research, and I'm looking at how they feed, sort of their jaws particularly. So I do like CT scans, and then I can 3D print CT scans. Most of my lab actually works with cichlids, so I have a little bit of an understanding. So, well, these are just two 3D prints of some pleco jaws, but most of my lab works with cichlids, so I know cichlids a little bit because they work with stuff like Vamphochromis, different haplochromides, because they're one of the most well-studied for their diets and their ecology. But I think catfish are quite a lot better and a lot more diverse. And I also do have an interest in South American cichlids, I guess, but not as much of a study because I have got a pair of discus in that tank, but they're not out in the way that you can see them. But that's the female coming forwards. But yeah, so I just do a mix of things.
So I've got a question. Have you got some sort of formal qualification for all this? Have you? What have you studied?
Yeah, so I've got an undergraduate in biology, and I specialise. It's kind of works different in different countries. So I did my undergraduate final project in Calyptidae, which is Corydoras and Hoplosternum, Megalichus, all of those sort of cory cats and the big cory cats, I guess. But I specialised in fishes, evolution, physiology, and then I went to do my master's joint with the Natural History Museum, and I've done work with them anyway, which I specialised in catfish. And sadly, I did do one thesis also on corals, which I'm not a big fan of corals because they just sit there and they're a bit squidgy. But cool. Yeah, so my final one I'm working for is my PhD.
Do you know what that means, Ryan? That means she's smarter than all 3 of us put together and then a lot more.
It's not hard to do that though, mate. So you're currently, you said you're studying plecos, which is pretty dumb, but anyway. Is that your employment?
So technically I'm funded to do my research and my study. So yes, it is employment. I also have several side things as part of my study. So I also teach aspects of biology. So usually evolution topics. And I also work at the University Aquarium. So I help out if they have if they need someone available, then usually I can go in on a weekend or a bank holiday or a holiday.
and just help out with their fish because...
Yeah. So all the different research fishes, and that's all sorts of things. So they've got some of my catfish there. So some of my research fishes, also a mixture of different... Actually, no real zebranos or danios or however people want to pronounce it, zebrafish. And we have not even any guppies, but we have a lot of Neolamphologus pulcher, some tilapia, which I kind of like because they're kind of big mouths. They're quite enthusiastic when they feed.
Which is the
And
biggest problem with tilapia,
stickleback.
obviously.
Sorry?
It's the biggest problem with tilapia because obviously they get released in places and just decimate all the natural populations. So, you know,
I don't think they'd survive here, but who knows? Because our
wouldn't
climate is a
survive
little
here.
bit colder, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And where do you live?
I live in the UK, so I live in England, south of England. I've never really lived. I live currently in Bristol, which is kind of like in the midline with London, but yeah, so very far away, and hence the different time zones and stuff like that, and different styles of fish keeping, I think, as well, or different fish available. Because it's kind of like almost if you want it, there's quite a lot you can get, but there is a banned list. So we actually have a positive list similar to yours, but I think ours is by genera. So it has a massive list of all the genera we can keep, which is like an Excel document that goes on for ages, which is why the US natives, a lot of them aren't legal, and some Asian fish.
And do they update that as things get reclassified?
I assume so. No one rarely do people check it. So I don't think it's as strict. But then I don't know if there's someone who's keeping an eye on the revisions, because there are fisheries people go to a lot of the scientific conferences, I guess. So I'm not entirely sure how much it gets updated.
Do you have quarantine over there? For fish coming into the country?
So it has when it comes over, it goes through like immigration, where they just check it, I guess, and check it's got the right species. And then it goes to the store. So within the same day, just depends how much they've got going through immigration. If it's stuff like immigration, but if it's stuff like dogs, cats, they've either got to have certificates or stuff like that, or quarantine, and I think that's like 6 months for some. But fishes, it's just straight through. So we get a lot of import. So anything South American is often wild caught. Quite a few Asian stuff, but then you wouldn't know because they're also farming them. African stuff would be wild caught mostly, unless it's from like Czech or Southeast Asia. But if it's actually shipped from Africa, which we don't get that many of, which is why we don't have that many pure synodontists around. Or like, I really like the spiny eels. Don't really see the Tanganyikan ones. But
you guys get a lot of big fish in your shops as well. That's something we definitely lack here in New Zealand, is good size display type fish. You get a lot of sort of mature animals, correct?
Yeah, well, you can do. It's quite expensive because you know where you buy per the box. They take up most of the box. So stuff like it just adds on the cost, even though they might be the same price. So like some of my plex, they're the same price, but I bought them at different sizes, and the actual difference in the price is from import. But you can get like Asian arowana, they come in at a good size. And some things just grow. Quite a lot just grows and then just gets moved around different stores. And a lot of stores have what we call like sumps, which aren't like the filter. They're connected to the filters, but they're just on the bottom, and it's just for where we put the big fish. A lot of like barla sharks, also known as like silver sharks. A lot of those big cichlids, and they kind of look all the same. A lot of people's unwanted Malawis, so a lot of grey Lunacala.
Can you please say that again? There's a lot of unwanted Malawis. That's what I heard, correct? Yeah, I thought so.
And poultures, the Neolamphologus Tanganyikan poultures. Someone came in with bags of them, including the Synodontis, the multipunctatus, I think. So they've been all spawning in this big tank, and they just brought in bags, so they all went in one big sump. Had like Malawi trout, A lot of the really nasty Mabuna and stuff.
And as they get hybridized, then they just turn into a muddy fish. People don't want them.
And basically. They don't sell.
No. You can't really give them away once they get big and they're ugly. You don't know what they are, and they're angry. And what do you do with them? Yeah,
it's similar with like some of the Central Americans as well. But there's some beautiful species, and like first ever time, not Central American, but I think it's Madagascan. It's black base, white spots, paratilapia, I think it is. That's a really beautiful one. That's the first I've only ever like seen them when they're dumped in the store, but because they get so big.
So big, and they're probably angry as well.
Yes, not as angry as they managed to take out quite a few fish, but not as bad as the jewel cichlids, because I put them with the jewels and the jewels then beat them up. So the jewels then had to go with the parrots, which they beat up the parrots. So then the jewels just went in with the big common plecos.
Yeah.
And these are the small Fempongii, which I think are now fasciatus. And no one wanted them, so they just sat there.
Yeah.
And no one wants the parrots either, to be honest, when they get that big. And they used to spawn as well.
Oh, God. Last thing you need is more of them. Last thing you need is more of them, eh?
Well, they're not fertile either, the hybrid parrots. So they just lay these eggs, defend the eggs. And it's like, what's the point? And they would always do it above the water change line. So they'd look at it as the water just goes down.
Yeah. That's awesome. And so you concentrate more on like evolution and science and the biological aspects of what they eat and how they function.
Yes.
Rather than health. Is that what you're saying?
So it is more of the physical biology, the physiology, the body shape, and how that affects what they feed on. Aspects of it I have to look at whether they do actually feed on it, if there's papers available. The health aspect is kind of, I don't actually know if there's many people studying it so much in ornamental fish or wild fish. It's not the best studied field anyway. So I look at more of like whether there's a gut analysis, which is where they dissect open the fish, see what's in there. And there's a few other things like extra science, isotopes and stuff.
Right. And obviously because these are ornamental fish, who funds the studies that you're doing? Are the universities or?
So my studies, I'm funded by the Fisheries Society in the UK, but some people will be studied like by universities. It depends what they do. Mine just specialises anyone in fish topics, but then there's people that are funded by the government and stuff for theirs.
Oh yeah, so there are some people that actually care about ornamental fish over there.
Yeah, but I don't. So my research is more in aspects of captive fish, but also mostly wild.
Right.
Wild is kind of more reliable because.
And you can push that back to a sustainability and an environmental sort of study more than an aquarium study, eh?
Yeah, in a way, it's kind of just more understanding what they feed on. I think is the useful aspect of it for the aquarist, because sometimes you'll see all sorts of things about what certain fish eat in the what they're meant to eat in the wild, and there's absolutely no records. I'm still trying to find a paper, so a scientific publication on a Lunacara, what they actually eat in the wild, because so far I just didn't find anything. Because everyone says, what's it?
Omnivore. They say omnivore.
Algae and some are omnivores, but what is an omnivore in the first place? Because it's not the same as, I guess, a dog. People say they're now more omnivorous. Because it's not like they're eating like mammals or stuff like that. But there's also things like that are meant to be carnivorous, like discus, and then even like Heiko Blair says they eat algae mostly in the wild, and you can't imagine them being able to hunt something down anyway.
No.
And like Tropheus, I found a little bit on, but they have such a similar like head shape to Discus, I think, in a way. But there is so much like
Tropheus are interesting. There's a lot of crap on them on the internet, and it's very hard to find actual information.
Yes.
Did I just hear that Tropheus and Discus are very similar in one way or another, and Ryan loves Tropheus and hates Discus? That's what I just heard, yeah?
No, they're different.
Discus are nicer.
They're different because Ryan can probably breed Discus, but he can't breed Tropheus.
I think anyone can breed Discus. Like, you have them as a small size and they're already pairing off.
The problem that I have with Discus is probably 90% of the ones we've got in the country are just shit. Like, they're not looked after properly, and they're very poor quality. They've got pinched in heads. Yeah, they live in very poor conditions. They got big, massive eyes because they're stunted, and they just look like crap. When you see a nice Discus, you can appreciate it, you know?
Yeah, I think a lot of, especially certain, like, suppliers don't always send the best quality. Whereas I guess with Tropheus, people are just, I don't know. People, if they like Tropheus, you're not really going to get, like, many casual hobbyists keeping Tropheus. They probably don't know what they are.
Also, if you neglect them, they die.
I think that's most fish.
But I think Discus don't seem to die. They just seem to get stunted and sort of sit there and do nothing and look like crap for a lot longer than a Tropheus will. So, yeah.
Yeah, I remember I've worked with this beautiful, like, gold Tropheus. I don't know what species it was, but it was just solid gold, probably a captive bred variant. But then there was two of them and they had to be split up because I never thought they'd be so nasty.
Yep, they need to be in a big group. And I've had those gold ones. I killed them, unfortunately. Was gutted, but anyway. Okay, cool. Do you two have any more questions for Rebecca before we go on to the rest of our random rubbish? Random rubbish. I mean, quality entertainment.
No, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good.
I got enough jabs in there. I'm happy to start the day.
Okay, cool. Rebecca, what have you had going on for your fish this week?
Not much at home. Like, a few weeks ago, I got this girl because I moved house and I lost one of the females, and he's not had a lady for a while. So I was like, I'll get him a lady, which they're getting on, apart from she's a bit bossy. That one is really old and lumpy, so I've got another male Discus I need to get another female for. Other than that, basically my whole day has been mixing Rapashi and then moving common plecos around, which they're only babbies, so they're fine.
And it's for your studies, is it?
Yeah, the Rapashi, yes, because it's kind of the easiest to use. Because other foods, you can't really measure amounts as easily, and then actually have like an aftered amount after like 12 hours, because most foods just break down like way too quickly.
We'll get into that.
But yeah, so not really that much. My fish room doesn't really change. I don't have that many fish.
How many aquariums have you got at home?
Only 2 at the moment. Like the plex are a bit. So one of these species has never been bred in captivity. The golden nuggets have a few times, but I think I've only got one mature male from one of them, and then the other one I've only got one mature female. So they're the wrong species. And then the platysaccus have never been bred in captivity. So, and then in that tank, I've only got like ones that I can't really find any others for the pair. Stuff like L309. My flash plec, which is Pinacus albivermis.
Is that the 204?
It's more that. Sorry?
Is that the 204, the flash pleco?
Yes.
They are cool.
That one, it's just, I don't know if I really want to breed it. So I just saw him in a store labelled as a clown pleco for 20 quid. I was like, that's cheap. I'll get my clown pleco.
Yeah.
So he just sits there fanning away, wishing for a lady to come by. So yeah, nothing really changes. Like at uni, my Farnawella are always breeding, which is the twig cats. But yeah.
So are you involved with the renaming and reclassification of species, or how does that happen? How does that happen? Because it just
Partially.
randomly seems to happen.
So I was
Obviously for us.
involved in Corridors Bethany and Corridors Colossus, which aren't corridors. So Hoplosoma Colossus and Brocus Bethany. I was involved in those, but I'm not involved in any other projects like that at the moment. Everything else is just going to be sort of anatomy right now. But I do have something written. I just need the right specimens because the ones are like too small. I need an adult, which means finding one really. And you can't use aquarium specimens or aquarium fishes for scientific descriptions.
Oh, okay.
Because they're not quite always the same fish. And then there's also like, you don't have exact locality because like just having the name of the river, the lake doesn't count. You want coordinates. And also things
because you might find it's like in the lake, you find different Iranicara, the same species at different locations. Yeah. Plecos are the same, aren't they? And they could be the same species, but a different subspecies or something like that.
Yeah.
So you don't know where they come from.
And for morphology, things change a lot once they're captive bred and stuff like that, or even just over time. I think with like African cichlids, there was something on Malawi cichlids where their diet changes their jaw shape, which if you're describing a species, you don't want to describe it on a totally different like head or jaw shape.
Yeah, that's cool. And so I've always wondered, how does the name change? Like how do they decide they're going to change it? Who decides that?
It's all like through scientific papers. So someone, the actual choice of the name is based on, well, whatever the person wants to name it within certain rules. So it has to be in the English or Latin alphabet, which is the alphabet we're all using. And then afterwards it has to be like feminine or masculine or neutral, a bit like in French or Spanish. They do that. And then other than that, it's up to you. As long as it's not too, I guess, offensive or controversial, then you might get a bit of drama.
Can you explain that a little bit? The French, Italian, feminine, masculine?
So the name has to be like it has to be the neutral or, with like French and Spanish, like with French, it's le or la, depending if it's masculine or feminine, the word.
I do now.
Scientific names have that, and it depends on the genus itself, I think, which is why when things switch genus, they will change the actual end of it. So I don't know if it's the reason that so when Coidos trilineatus went to Hoplosoma, it's now Hoplosoma trilineatum, which I think is probably due to that. And it's also like Coidos aeneus, whatever, is now Osteogaster aenea, which is kind of a bit better because people used to spell it wrong all the time. And that used to be a bugbear of mine when people spell aeneus wrong.
And so it's interesting to know who would someone publishes a paper, and then what the scientific community somehow gets together and agrees on it, and then agrees to change the name.
Kind of. So it's like it has to be peer reviewed by like 5 or 6 people. So it's not like a whole little. It's not like a consensus, like a little where we have like a cult and we decide sort of the thing. So sometimes when marking, people say the scientists agree this, and it's not like we're sort of initiated into
sitting at a round table and arguing about it or anything.
Yeah, but there is a lot of arguments about names. I think it's Coidos, Osteogaster, the aeneus, aenea. So the bronze people. So for right now, I think it's the Venezuelas and the the black ones that the black corries, then that's still in aeneus, but they do have a name that they could use. It's all sorts of, there's a little rule book as well about fish names.
So I guess what happens is when you've got like corridors, for example, do they define how a fish fits into corridors, and then the reason they pull them out is because they no longer fit in that genus, or is that how it works? Or
using different techniques? Yes, yeah. So you'll do stuff like either argue over whether if you can't do like a phylogeny, which is like a family tree, and they're all opinion based anyway. Then you just match it depending on how its shape and stuff like that. Because you could do all sorts of different methods, but there's I think that's
okay, cool. Yeah, I've just always wondered that as a question. So, and sometimes the African cyclones are always reclassified, always, and I'm just like,
some things move a lot more than others. It just depends on how much we know at the time, and some we know like lower cars. So plex definitely are going to shift around, because some of them like Sudan cistrus. There's a Sudan cistrus that isn't anywhere closely related to any other traditional pleco. Yes, it's just there. And then there's like 2 different groups of them, I think. And the same with Hemian cistrus and like Barian cistrus. And I assume with the African cichlids it's the same, but I know a lot of people don't have time to work on them, I think. But I assume... But it's also like with Neolamphilogus, I don't think it's helpful to have so many Lamphilogus or Neolamphilogus, hence why they shifted them around.
Yeah.
Because
there's a lot in there. There's a lot in there, isn't there, at the moment?
Yeah. And it includes all the shell dwellers, which I don't think they're all in one group, though. I think they're dotted around. But then I guess it depends what you define as a shell dweller. I don't know.
And we did a shell dweller episode and we couldn't actually define shell dwellers either, so there you go.
Yeah, and then I guess you could say anything that enters a shell, but you probably get like the spiny eels that go inside the shells and stuff like that.
We're trying to eat the shell dwellers.
Yeah, to be honest, shell dwellers are a bit of a pain, so don't blame them.
Oh, I think they're cool.
Yeah, I worked with quite a few. I worked with Simulus, Brevis, Maltese, and there might be one other. And the Brevis was the most ugly one because the big male had lost half its jaw. And
the males do get big and deformed as they get older.
Yeah. And it's the way he just picked up the female and rammed her in the shell. I was like, this is just awful. You don't see that, too much of that with like discus and nice South Americans. Even geophagus aren't too bad. They just eat what fits.
Eat what fits.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, that was my thing. I haven't had a lot going on in the fish room. I tried to fix the last tank so I could get to 69, and then I smashed it with a giant chili bin. So back to the drawing board on that one. The bottom's already been patched.
With silicon yet?
Well, I tried fixing it with lots of silicon and lots of patches, but it was a patch on a patch on a patch on a patch, and then it was a smashed bottom, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to patch the bottom anymore. I think I just need to replace this multi-patched piece of glass. So I haven't quite got there with that, unfortunately. That's about it, really. I've been on a quest to try and make my sumps quieter. Not working. Annoying me. No matter what I try, they're still noisy, gurgly, bubbly, horrible things in my lounge. I bought this real fancy muffler thing. It was supposed to work. Doesn't even fit in the weir. Didn't check how big it was. So yeah, that's been my journey. I love sumps, but I hate the gurgling. So
you had some interesting mail as well last week. Did you want to share?
Sorry, yes. Right at the end of the last episode, someone signed me up to be an Aramex courier franchisee. So it's great because I love Aramex, and maybe they can send me some merch and sponsor the podcast. You know, the drivers are about as reliable as we are. So, and I think it's Thomas that's calling. What's that?
We turn up every week.
Yeah, on time, I guess. So, We're way better than Aramex because sometimes it doesn't even show up at all.
Yeah, we've got a prime suspect for this, and we've got Detective Matt on the case, and we're looking at you, Thomas. We reckon it's all working towards you.
And the pet insurance people are still ringing me about Baldy, their cat, to try and sell me insurance. And the Aramex lady rang me and said she was looking forward to seeing me at the Aramex conference and stuff. And
are you going to go forward with the Aramex application to become a franchisee?
I was just going to ask them, hey, look, you guys have the worst reputation in the market. What do you say to that? And see what they say. But yeah, Helen. I don't think it's Helen.
Yeah. Although she does have a bit of a vendetta against you since you told her to mow your lawns.
To be fair, I did say that women can't mow the lawns, and then I found out that one can.
Sorry,
I've never mown the lawn. She
might be having an evil genius plan of attack against you. That is a possibility.
That's cool. As long as when she comes here to kill me, she mows my lawns first, I'm happy.
She gets something like sheep or horses. They're quite good. I use the guinea pigs sometimes. Well, I used to use the guinea pigs. I'd sit out there with a glass of wine and put the run out, and I'd be like, "Oh, I'm mowing the lawn."
I like it. I like it. One time as a kid, we did bring the horses home and put them on the lawn to eat the grass because they didn't want to mow it, and then they just dug up the whole lawn, and my dad was real angry, but it was really funny, so it was worth it.
Or worse, goats.
Goats, yeah, well, they eat everything. They eat all your plants too, so they're great fun. What about you, Matt? Anything exciting going on?
Nothing exciting. I've been shipping fish. I sent out about 4 or 5 boxes over the last week.
Nice.
Most of them to the South Island, and all of them have made it, which has been cool.
How long ago did you get paid for them before you sent them?
So I got paid and I sent them the next day.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
normally the
Yeah,
process that happens, right?
6 months
Someone
lead time.
pays,
6
you
months
send
lead
them.
time.
Yeah.
And you sent them overnight courier, not on a Thursday?
Correct.
All right, cool.
Yeah. I'm not selling dreams. I'm actually sending people their
selling
fish.
bags of rotten water.
Do you not get, is your shipping because here, if it will be overnight, people will freak out if fishes don't arrive overnight, like customers will. Do you not get the really quick shipping as a store?
Well, you get overnight, but they change the names of everything so you can get tricked.
Yeah.
And I made a mistake, and I said I want to courier this as fast as possible, and it ended up on a 3-day courier, not a 1-day courier. And then on a Wednesday, so they were due to arrive on the Saturday, which means they arrive on the Monday. So they went 5 days and did not survive.
I guess
overnight's also a very loose term over here. There's no set rule that it will definitely be overnight, and then they
just tell you. They tell you shouldn't have been sending fish anyway if they die. So
it's expensive, I assume, because it's
a
big amount of space, isn't it?
Not really that big.
What, New Zealand?
It's not that big, yeah.
Oh, I thought
it's
it was
bigger than the UK.
Oh, okay. Well,
but
the
it's not
UK's
huge.
big to me, so to get to Scotland, I think it's about 8 hours drive.
What do you want to take to drive from the top to the bottom of the North Island or South Island?
You can do the top to the bottom in about one island in about 10 hours, I think. From Nelson, where I am on the top of the South Island, to the bottom towards Invercargill with Dunedin is around about 10 to 12 hours or something like that. And that's one island.
You probably go the whole thing in a day, right, with a 3-hour courier trip. You could probably do the whole thing in a day with a 3-hour ferry trip, I reckon.
Oh, you probably could do it in 24 hours if you time it right and you've got someone else driving with you. No, I think most of the couriers go by truck throughout the country.
God,
overnight ones go by air though, do they?
Depends on the courier company, I think.
Yeah, and where you are in the country.
Yeah.
Then we've got
this big body of water in between the two islands, which is the most expensive body of water in the world to cross. It's not that big at all. It's like a 3-hour ferry trip but it's the most expensive body of water to cross in the world, and that inflates the freight cost ridiculously going between islands.
Need your own boat.
Yeah, that'd be an option. And my own plane and my own truck, and we'll just courier fish daily via these 3 vessels for 3 boxes a day.
Nice.
The boat would be quite fun, though. Fishing. I assume you get quite interesting marine fish, though, where you are. Or, I don't know.
I haven't studied a lot. I've caught a lot of fish when I used to go fishing, but I think our marine fish are quite bland here, aren't they? They seem to be all brown. Ones I've seen have been all brown and a bit boring, but
It's
probably
like
have some
here,
cool
I
ones, I
guess.
imagine.
You probably, we don't get that many fresh, there's not that many freshwater natives either. So it's slightly exciting when there is a few invasives, but that's like with our wildlife in general.
Yeah. We got the same. Our natives are fairly bland and underkept, and the problem with them is you got to keep them in cold water.
Same.
So
Apart
over
from
summer
stickleback.
they get too hot over summer.
Yeah, stickleback can last here, but they don't seem to do too well. Everything else just goes into a panic, I think, and just dies. I've never tried. It's just catching them, I guess. Apart from carp, but they're most invasive, I think.
Yeah.
Carp can survive anything and eat.
We've got
anything.
problems with them here. We've got problems with them here too. So, Cam, what are you going on?
Nothing positive. I've had a had a spawner green severums that got the mold, got the fungi, so that continues my track record of breeding severums with about 4 spawns and 1 fry. So that's a fantastic record, almost as good as you and your Tropheus.
Yep.
Got a silver dollar with a really, really nasty bacterial infection, and a giant Popeye, which I missed, which I feel quite bad about. So that's about it. So,
Cool.
Happy days.
Positive.
Did we get
Very
any listener
positive.
mail?
Did we get any listener mail? Yes, we did. Would you like me to read it out?
You read that out. I'll work on a random question.
Okay. And Matt can probably further this a little bit after we ask the question. So, the email is titled Actual Listener Mail, so this hasn't come from one of my alleged bots, Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm currently breeding a lot of angelfish and mollies. I was wondering, when selecting for specific traits, at what point should I be concerned about too much inbreeding? Cheers, Jamie.
Inbreeding is an interesting one, isn't it? And Rebecca probably has a theory, or actually some scientific background of this, maybe.
I've never really looked too much into inbreeding. It's more like it depends on the species. It's really and some species manage it, like the mangrove killifish is like 99.8% inbred because they self-fertilize, and there's like a few males, so they don't really have much outcrossing, and it does depend on the species. Some really manage it. I'd assume quite a few live bearers have mechanisms not to be have issues with inbreeding. Angelfish, I assume, aren't really able to deal with. But there's no set value. It's not like after X amount of generations of siblings, breeding siblings, they're just gonna die. Or so
it's interesting. Yeah. Obviously, with African cichlids, well, especially in New Zealand, I've got no option but to inbreed because we don't get good stock.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to get a shipment of wild caught fish to introduce some new blood into my known lines. And a lot of my lines, I don't know what location they come from anyway, so I'd just be creating rubbish. So I haven't had a lot of issues with it, but I'm very selective in culinary deformities I do see. And if I'm noticing something getting a bit funky, I stop doing it.
Yeah, especially if they're not living as long. I think a lot of people don't actually know how inbred their fish might be. Like zebra plecos, pretty short, given they usually come from very few suppliers. it depends where you get them. They're going to not be the greatest. They seem to manage, I guess. But
yeah, it
there
is
is some
interesting.
like calculations. Like I swear I've seen like some models, mathematical models on inbreeding, but yeah. And sometimes, yeah, you have to just you have to deal with what you've got.
Yeah, if you can't get anything new, the choice is inbreed or don't do it. You know, like
Pretty much.
so. I mean, there's we've got White Knight Freyeri, which are a hybrid strain of Freyeri, which is electric blue, that are white, and I get probably 50% deformities in the breedings of them.
I guess the option there is whether you want to outbreed, but then outcross. But if you do that, how many generations can you get the colour back?
Exactly.
And
So,
space.
and will that achieve it? Will that achieve the aim? Should do.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's an example there of something that's obviously highly inbred, highly line bred, where it does probably cause problems. Obviously, I just cull out all the deformed ones, but you end up with a very small yield. The fish are still strong and healthy, but there are a lot of bent ones in there. And maybe the initial genetics were stuff that they bred from. They carried that deformity. I don't know, but yeah.
Or like rams. Rams, no doubt, I think are horrifically inbred. And guppies, gourami, quite a few corridors probably. Stuff like that. Where they've just, I guess there was this initial stock to a supplier and no one's really like updated it. And I think with the rams, that's particularly strong. I don't know. There's a distinct difference between, I guess, different times of getting the rams. So I just remember them being so much bigger, stronger, nicer, because they weren't as. Some can be really nasty these days, or even a few years ago. But they're definitely weaker than they used to be, and so many fishes are.
I often some of these fish that I see come through, I wonder how they even get them to the stores without them dying. They look that stuffed, eh? You just like look at it and you go, that thing's about to drop dead. How did it even survive traveling? Or maybe it was the traveling that did it. I don't know. But yes, but in our case, they got to be quarantined and they come out of that apparently healthy and all that stuff, but they don't look that good.
But there's only specific things they're looking for. They're not looking for inbred as far as health goes. They're looking for specific diseases that can then cross over into our waterways sort of scenario.
They probably might not even know what is an inbred. It depends what their background is with fishes, because a lot of ours might not be, but then we do have fish health officers involved in fish disease. And how do they know it's not some captive bred funky strain? Because if you're not used to fish, then
no. And everyone delves down in their own little niches and knows exactly what everything is, but there's not one person that knows every single niche. So, you know, and even within niches, you get people that specialize even more. So, yeah.
Yes, definitely. Especially if you go to fish societies. Like I think Cam has mentioned previously, you've only got one society in New Zealand.
We've got like an overarching.
It's effectively not operating, basically.
We have like in the UK, we have a catfish one, a killifish one, a cichlid one, a gourami one, then probably I guess better one might still exist. And then there's koi and goldfish, and they have like 5 or so per an area. I think in the US they have even more, because I swear for cichlids they have some states or cities have their own cichlid association. Yeah. And then even within those groups,
Ohio ones, cichlid one's very prominent.
I think ours we have it. There is a slight regional one, but it's like the whole of East Anglia, which is one of the bits that sticks out opposite Wales. They have a cichlid bit. But then it's like with us, the catfish sort of thing. There's the people that like corridors. There's the pleco people. And then there's the odd few that like other things, like few synodontist people and stuff like that. But yeah, people
cool.
specialise to extreme, like wood cats. Loads of people, because you don't even see them. They just sit in the wood, and then when you feed, they come out, or they're just so big and they eat things they shouldn't, or will.
Have you noticed that the pleco breeders and keepers are real weirdos, and they only come out at night, and they like to just sleep under bits of driftwood in their bed and stuff?
That's
or
why I'm so pale. I don't go out. My plecos.
Yeah. Okay. Oh shit! I needed a random question.
I
I
think,
got sidetracked.
Does Matt have something to add to that?
Yeah, all I was going to say was with the angelfish, I think in New Zealand, one thing that we do have is a lot of different angelfish out there. And I think depending on what they're wanting to focus on genetics-wise, there should be options for that. They're not going to know how inbred their angels are to start off with. And then I think, as Rebecca was saying, it's going to be one of those things where you try it and pay attention, and if you notice that something's going wrong, stop doing it. But I think they should, in the first instance, try not to. So if you can not, then it's always better. I've actually just asked the question to someone who I got a pair of angels off this week, with probably the most impressive genetic pool I have ever seen. So if an answer comes in on that during this, I will let you guys know as well.
Does the person keep records then? Because I know some people, the guppy world, I think, is really good at that. Everyone else just, so how do you know which one's which? And they're like...
Yeah, so this person's got full-blown records. And yeah, well, most of the time sends it very scientific to me, and it goes straight over my head, and I'm like, layman's terms, please. But yeah, full records, and yeah.
People need to keep more records, I think, especially who they're passing the fish on to, and then because otherwise, who knows, someone might just be getting siblings from when they think they're totally different fish.
Do you think it's a like for me in New Zealand, you look overseas and someone's got XYZ's line of XYZ fish? That kind of doesn't happen in New Zealand. It's like, I've just bought this fish. Cool, I'm happy now. Whereas over, like in America, I've got this person's of this, but I've also got this person's of this, which is the same fish, but they're different because it's this line and this line.
We don't really have that apart from, fancy hypencystrus plecos. It's kind of useful to have those lines, but I don't know. I guess... I don't know, there might be a difference of hobby culture to it. Although...
Also, in New Zealand, we don't have a large number of breeders to reference it from. There's not that many pleco breeders in New Zealand. There's not that many African cichlid breeders on a semi-serious level in New Zealand. So we don't have different lines.
Well known?
What's that?
Are they as well known? Like, I think a lot of US breeders, like Greg Sage is quite well known. So people will say, we've got something from his line. Was that here, I think, and Europe, there's a lot of whoever's bred the first of something.
Yeah, over here, people don't really, I'm going to say, don't care as much.
Don't care. I don't think.
Well, I mean, if you look at it, there's so many people in the hobby, and this many people aren't going to care, and this many people are. But with New Zealand, we've only got so many people, so the people that actually care is very small. Most of the people are just want a tank in their house and want it to look nice and not go green. So,
but could that also be an issue from the breeders, for example, not putting more emphasis on what they're doing, what they're producing, and how the quality that they're producing to get that name and reputation behind them?
I think half the issue that I see is that there's so many people breeding and putting stuff online, and it's either got the wrong name or it's just mud. And so, I mean, yeah, if you were to promote what you're doing a little bit more, you might get that recognition, but there's just so much out there that Ryan's probably seen, you could put a fish up for $50 to $100 and it's a really good high quality fish, but someone else will put it up for $5 and say it's the same name. And because people don't care, they'll go, I'll take the $5 fish.
Yeah. So I've been, I've just bought some rams off Green, and they are easily the biggest, brightest, most phenomenal rams that I've ever got my hands on, without any question of a doubt. And he's working really hard on them. Genetically, they're all going to be rams, but what he's producing looks to be visually a really high quality fish. So if he continues to do that and continues to put his name on it, then that might begin. I've got a ram from this person's line over a imported ram, if that kind of makes sense.
The hard part with it in New Zealand is we're not big enough really to make it a full-time living.
Yeah,
but
and I guess
it's a passion project, right?
You can't really get fish out as well, because I think with some of the US people, they're a big country anyway, but then it also, some get into the UK, and some of the German and Southeast Asian fish go between different countries as well. And I think Cichlids of America, I think some of their fish came into the UK, and hence why some people have their lines or just originates from them. Whereas,
but when it's a passion project, when the passion runs out, it's gone. And when there's not a lot of money in it, it's tricky to keep it going.
How many generations do you want to do of certain fishes as well?
Well, and for me, I know it gets boring after a while. For a hobby, you just pumping and keeping these lines going. Once you breed them a couple of times, you're like,
to be fair, you are working with Malawi cichlids, and they're generally a boring, same fish, different color anyway. Do something fun.
Same shape, different colors.
You got it. Same fish, different paint job.
We have to actually get onto the topic. We have to get onto the topic, or we're going to run out of time. So, the random question is: which celebrity would you choose for your best friend?
What celebrity? Define celebrity.
Would you choose for your best friend?
Define celebrity. Can that be an athlete? Can that be an athlete as well?
Yeah, well, they're a celebrity. You can do whatever, as long as it's actually a famous person. I can put them in Google and they'll come up.
Okay. Cool.
Do they have to be still alive?
The question did not say if they had to be alive or dead, so you can choose whatever.
Okay, that makes it easier.
I've got Dave Grohl because he's a man and he just seems so cool. So I'll go Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters. I think he's the man. I'd like to have a beer with him. So yeah.
That's a pretty good answer. I would go with him or Adam Sandler.
Oh, Adam Sandler, yeah, that'd be me.
Yeah. That's what I was literally gonna say, Adam Sandler.
Yes, I won.
I don't. Mine's gonna be really nerdy because I don't watch that many movies anymore, as some people that watch another live stream might know. So I was just gonna say someone like Alfred Russel Wallace, because it's kind of cool what he did with evolution and going up the Rio Negro before anyone else and stuff. So just a nerdy one, because otherwise I can't think of anyone.
Yeah. Matt, who you got? You got Adam Sandler, do you?
Yeah, Mr. Sandler. Yeah.
I've seen some of his movies. I don't know. I'm not really big into the American sort of humour. I kind of like the old-fashioned British Dad's Army and stuff, which you probably don't get in New Zealand.
No, we get it.
We're not that far behind.
Yeah.
No, it's not Christmas, so I have an excuse not to see it. I kind of know the plot now because
we're halfway through the year. We are now close enough to Christmas to say we're coming into Christmas. So get into Die Hard.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's get on to the topic because we are well over time. Well over time, and this is actually an interesting topic that people want to hear about. So,
being that it's a revisited topic that one of the listeners has asked us to go back over.
Yes. So I guess I'm going to put a question out there and say, what are we looking for when we buy fish food? each individually, what are we looking for? How does that go?
Ingredients. I pick up ingredients everywhere, and I've started looking at fishing foods now. But they're useful pots actually. Like even like I've got loads of fish pots and stuff. But I was just looking at ingredients to see whether it matches what the fish would eat in the wild, because it's shocking how similar a lot are. So especially if you're paying quite a bit for fish food, like the difference in price, like some foods might be you buy a kilo for, let's say, £10, whereas you could buy something like 100 grams for that same price or more, and it's exactly the same ingredients. And I don't even look at like the protein levels, which a lot of people focus on, but it kind of, it's a bit vague because protein is such a big topic.
And a lot of the proteins they put in there are not necessarily good proteins. If they're filling it up with soy and shit like that, fish meal,
yes,
and just to get the protein level up, but it's not actually usable or good protein for the fish.
Yeah, peas are a big one as well, and like pea protein isolate. I think it might be slightly a gelling agent as well, which is no issue because you kind of need the food to stick together, because otherwise what's the point if it's just breaks down in seconds?
Yeah, you don't want to put a powder in your tank.
No. I think for fry sometimes, but ingredients has to be the one thing, because then you realise how similar a lot of diets are. And some people say, I want to feed my fish variety, so I use this, this and this. And then you look at the ingredients, it's exactly the same. And some brands do the same, where they say cichlid, they have a cichlid diet, a pleco diet. Firstly, cichlids don't all eat the same thing. Plecos don't all eat the same thing. Then the marine diet and a goldfish diet, and you look at the ingredients and it's the same thing.
Yeah, I've noticed that with New Life Spectrum.
I got a question on variation of fish needing a varied diet. I'm on a bit of a mindset that, like in the wild, they don't go too far away. We'll just use round numbers, like a meter square, for example. So in that meter square, they're only getting one or two different sorts of food source. So they don't need massive variation. Time of the year changes, different water flow will produce different food coming through and that kind of stuff. So, 8 months of the year feeding this one product, 2 months of the year feeding this product, and then another couple months of the year feeding this product, sort of works a variation in my mind, as opposed to today they get this, tomorrow they get this, tomorrow they get this, tomorrow they get this. What's your kind of thoughts on that with variation?
I think it depends on the diet. Some diets have more ingredients than others and offer more variation right there. So you could, and it just depends what you have available to you as well. Like
because
Australia,
we don't get all the brands in New Zealand.
I think you have at least for passion. You've got fish science. That's something.
Yeah. Fish science is pretty limited here. I think I might be the only stocker of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think variation is just as long as they're not just getting the same set thing, and ideally not that aquaculture meal, which a lot of diets have, which you can even predict it will either be the first ingredient will always be fish meal or krill, and then the second ingredient will be usually vegetables or cereals, and then after that's usually a load of additives. And then if you go into a fishing tackle shop and look at their ground bait, it will also be exactly the same as that. And then if you go to like looking for trout food, but if you're farming trout, it'll be exactly the same as that.
So what you mentioned krill there.
Yeah.
Is that not a good thing to have in food?
Depends on the fish. If they eat krill in the wild, potentially, but if they're not, then they might not be able to digest it as well or extract the nutrition they need from it, especially if they're insectivore, maybe. But if they're eating algae naturally or plants or something like that, then it's not the best use for them. They can't extract as much nutrition from it. It's a bit like, I guess. I always think of sweet corn when I say of not being able to be digested well, but
yeah,
something like that. Just more of a case of wood and foods not digested at all. But
so it's interesting though. It's really because when you look at the food ingredients, I've looked at a lot of them, and I think I'm looking at it going, this is crap, this is crap, this is crap, this is crap. Most of them look like crap, The best one I've found is Rapashi so far. But it's hard to find a good food. And a lot of them look good. They have fancy packages. They have photos of the fish on the front that they're all shiny and stuff. And you're like, oh, yeah, that's got a photo of my fish on it. I'll feed them that. It must be good for them. You look at it, you go, oh, it's just rubbish. What, you know? So
yeah, it's difficult like to know without, and the ingredients can be an absolute maze because they use so many different names for the same thing. Like fish meal is the same as fish and fish derivatives, and you'll see vegetables and vegetable derivatives as well, which generally I assume most would be waste products from the fishing industry, like the actual fishing for human food. But it's largely, a lot of them are using the same sort of things because the science is mostly focused on feeding something that you're going to eat in a 6 months time.
yeah, not live long
Yeah,
term.
which is part of the issue. And I don't know whether that's why certain foods are more expensive than others. Like Rapashi is no doubt quite expensive, but the ingredients are quite expensive as well. I've got loads of algae because I was going to try and make my own. And it does that. It's not cheap to produce at all, but.
And it's more of a premium product.
Yes.
It's not
and it's difficult to know. There's no sort of mid-level either, I don't think. It's either, I guess, I don't mind Tetra. I know a lot of people hate Tetra, but it's not the worst. If you get Tetra at all.
We used to. I haven't seen it for a while, but
still here.
Yeah.
Again, it's not in a lot of shops, but it's still definitely here.
Because you get more Sierra, don't you? I think, or
our Sierra guy is quite active, but I don't really like it.
No, and JBL. The ingredients are that fish meal, cereal, vegetable, and I find quite a lot doesn't actually get eaten at all. Like the tabs, if you put it down on a glass tank, seems like a lot just gets left. But I did talk to a breeder, and they were feeding. Originally, they're feeding Rapashi, and then they tried Sierra, I think, and the fish just stopped spawning. But that sort of stopping of spawning, it happens to a lot of plecos, I guess, because they live so long. But a lot of people are feeding those sort of foods, and then they're like, oh, the fish is infertile after 10 years, but then it lives another 15. So that doesn't really biologically work. So there's a lot more. Yeah, the sort of traditional food diets aren't the best. And there was one study that was into algae. So they fed one species of algae, Tensistrus, and the fish did just as well as being fed one of those traditional foods. And that was just one species of algae. So if you feed multiple species.
It's a hard one to do, though. I still don't know the answer for food. I mean, I go around in circles with it. Rapashi is definitely good, but it is bloody expensive when you've got a lot of tanks.
Yes, especially if you've got African cichlids, they're going to be consuming quite a bit as well. It's a little bit easy with plecos, I guess. There's kind of like a compensation sort of what you're going to feed, and also depends on the fish. And some fish don't even want to touch certain foods, like discus. I can't get them to eat Rapashi. I guess if you had a big shoal, then you can kind of get them to sort of hoard onto it.
You frenzy onto it, yeah.
Yeah, whereas they don't really. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you looked into Dr. Bessler's food? Have you seen that one?
Well, if you look at the ingredients, it's exactly the same as.
Yeah,
it's got 5% difference, and one of them has a certain herb that is not always legal in it.
Yeah, it's interesting because a guy was looking at bringing it to New Zealand, and I was looking at the ingredients going, I don't know why you bring this here because it's basically the same as all the other foods that are in the country.
It's got good marketing. I think that they've done really well with marketing because I think they were talking to a lot of different influencers at a certain time. And that's all you need to do at some point is just talk to certain people, get them to promote it, and then it just sort of flies off.
The answer to when I questioned the ingredients on that was, I didn't look at the ingredients. I just trust the guy that's making it knows what he's doing.
Oh,
Because
yeah,
he's a
I've
doctor.
heard that.
And I thought, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I understand that, but I don't agree with it,
Yeah,
but I understand what you're saying.
I think the marketing thing, Extreme, has done incredibly well with that, because I don't think it's all that fantastic.
I think
Someone just mentioned Extreme in the chat, which reminded me.
I think I looked at it last week, and Extreme, I think it was the only difference between the algae or vegetable based one was they just put kelp as the first ingredient. The rest of it was the same.
Mm.
And they pulled krill out, eh?
Sorry?
They would have had, they're the ones that have krill as the main ingredient, and the veggie one has kelp as the main ingredient, does it?
It might be krill actually instead of fish meal, but it's still got a lot of krill in, which is a bit pointless. If you're feeding something that mostly feeds on algae in the wild, you don't need to bulk it out with krill. It's just cheap sort of ingredient, which is kind of like, well, it's difficult to find anything high in algae anyway. If you go carnivore, there's plenty of frozen foods to feed. There's all sorts of things, or you can make your own live food. But
there's only a percentage of spirulina that can actually be taken up by a fish. Is that correct? I think maybe it's just a human. Like you can consume like a full teaspoon of spirulina, but only X amount of it can actually be absorbed correctly.
I think cyanobacteria is quite difficult to digest, or for a few things. But then, like plecos eat loads of it in the wild, and I think hill stream loaches as well. But the other thing with spirulina I find is a lot of fish don't want to touch it, and I don't blame them. It does smell foul and taste foul, because I tried it for the health effects, which I'm never again, because it's
rubbish.
is awful. But a lot of fish don't seem too keen on it.
I wonder if that's why the rapace smells so pungent.
Yeah, and
the green ones.
The Cruella, the other algae in it, the sea one.
Yeah, I know the one. Yeah,
that one smells. It's not as bad. And I would say bottom scratcher probably smells worse, but then I think invertebrates in general, like if you're ever work with like roaches and stuff, the smell is quite pungent.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what's your theory or comment on insect meal?
I don't mind it, but then it's whether there's a lot of chitin that. It depends on the actual insect meal. I don't think mealworms are much use. Quite a few don't actually have that much B12 in, but then a lot of diets supplement it. I'm kind of indifferent in a way, if it in general, but then if it's an insectivore, I'd rather have insect meal or something similar. Because if not many of our fish eat fish in the wild anyway.
No, neither are true carnivores. They're mostly just scavengers, aren't they? Just eat whatever they can find.
Well, but it depends on the fish. But I think when I was on my latest article, I was trying to think of cichlids that eat fish. And the only thing that, like, I was trying to think of the name of a big Malawi cichlid, and then later the Malawi trout came to mind. But by that time, I was like, peacock bass, they definitely eat fish. Oscars don't really.
A lot of the Nimbochromas do in the lake too. They're like ambush predators. They bury themselves and, lie on the bottom.
Nimbochroma's not Malawi trout.
No.
Oh, are they eye biters?
Eye biters are different as well. And Malawi trout are a different species altogether. I forget the name of them. I'm not very good with names, but they're different. Very long, slender ones, eh?
Yeah,
they get quite
amazing to look at. They have a whole white bait in one. But
my next question is beef heart. Discus breeders love it, say it's the most amazing food. I've read theories on the internet that say that it was only used because it was cheap at the time and the breeders needed a cheap food with protein in it, and they started using it, and now everyone uses it. I think we shouldn't be using it, but people do. What do you reckon?
Well, there's a lot of cows in South America, but they obviously aren't getting taken down by hordes of discus. There's no, I think it's not the worst because obviously it gets colour. The fish, it brings out really nice colour. They sometimes eat it. It's sloppy. So it does tend to produce a lot more waste that isn't eaten. But discos are a bit more tricky to get to eat certain foods anyway. But I'd rather do something like yes, they eat a lot of algae in the wild, but getting them to give them algae, like getting them to feed on algae is a really different thing. So like a good dry diet, diversity of frozen foods. So yeah, beef heart, I don't think there's much need for it, but it's much better. And you'll also see people selling raw mussel, raw krill, raw prawn, like mixed together, which is a whole other kettle of fish for a bad diet. Because if anyone knows anything about raw mussels, they're high in thiaminase, which is a toxin, as is
The prawns are bad for that too, eh?
prawn. Sorry?
Yeah. The prawns are bad for that too, aren't they?
Yes,
The thyroid, whatever
prawns.
it is, yeah.
And then also heavy metals, like you're not meant to be eating that much. And they kind of, if they don't recommend having mussels for like pregnant women, I don't think it's that beneficial for the fish. But then I think that's more to do with bacteria probably.
And a lot of those things I've found as well when I feed them to fish is they become like lollies to them, and it makes them fussier because for whatever reason they seem to love them. They seem to love it, and they don't want to eat anything else. What's that?
Bloodworm can do that. I worked with a Maboo because this guy that I worked with was really enthusiastic about giving everything bloodworm. So he'd go around with this massive tub, giving everything bloodworm, and some Maboo puffers would only eat bloodworm. So they'd never grow. And I was like, no, banning bloodworm from these fish. They either have to eat something else or they have to deal with it, because there's no point having like tiny Maboo that never grow because they've only had bloodworm and will only eat bloodworm.
Because nutritionally, bloodworms aren't that great, are they? I don't like bloodworms. I recommend not feeding them. But
I don't think they're that great because they're difficult to digest for a lot of things. Sometimes they might be okay for fattening up fishes, because I was recommended to give bloodworms a go by a fish vet. Actually, it'd be, was it Jen, who was on the fishing podcast? Because my male discus, he's old and lumpy and bumpy. If you want to see a discus that looks like a zits, then that's the discus to look at. I don't know how old he is because he was even like a rehome when I got him, but she recommended it, and it's dealt with most of his issues apart from the zits, which his spots are not the most appealing. I think they're tumours, but he's old.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing as well that we got from dealing with. Well, I got from listening to Jen and Nora, was it?
Yeah,
the two of them. Is a lot of it is obviously fish dependent as well. Like what species you're actually dealing with is all different, you know.
Yeah.
So discus might be alright on some bloodworms.
Yeah, and bloodworm. I prefer tubifex, but I think it depends on which country you are to how good the source is. Here, it's pretty safe, but I think in the US, I don't know. Maybe I don't think the US gets as well of a selection of live or even frozen, maybe. But here it's just quite easy to get.
Like I've got a really good variant of good lines of live foods, like coming into shops in little plastic bags on a weekly basis, eh?
Yes, that's what we get here anyway. It's quite nice. Like tubifex, you can keep it in the jar for a bit. You're not meant to, but
yeah. And you get it live.
Yeah, live and frozen. The live things you could get river shrimp, which are like big pinchy brackish shrimp that you put in with some predatory fish. Then tubifex, brine shrimp, daphnia, bloodworms, blackworms. Quite a mixture, and sometimes you get some bycatch as well. I've seen, so I would be a little bit wary with some live food. Just check the little bag, because in daphnia here I've seen fish lice, which not everyone will know what they look like, but when you see them, they're quite distinctive. But probably depends on your supplier as well, whether they're like how wild they are.
I mean, if they're outside in big ponds, all sorts can get into them, can't they? Right?
Yeah.
And that's just what it is.
Yeah, and frozen foods are even better. I've got a little jar of squid that I keep finding in mysis. So obviously they're trawling through for mysis and they get little squids. And I've had a crab before.
Oh yeah.
We've had a couple of questions come up from people watching. Helen would like to know what your feelings are on flakes versus granules.
Some fish will only feed on flakes. It depends what they're feeding on in the wild. Granules obviously it doesn't break down as easily. Easier to get this kind of nutrition in. But flakes, I think they're not as bad as people say. Discus, I find, are more willing to feed on flakes, and it's kind of easier to distribute food, I guess. And then I've also worked with like some predatory characins that probably specialize in scales in the wild and they eat flakes. But that was the only dry food they ever touched, other than frozen and stuff. But I think it depends on the ingredients as well. It's not just about whether it's flakes or granules. I'm not really fussed on that.
You can't say flakes good and pellets are bad, because there will be good flakes and there will be bad flakes, you know.
Yeah.
So,
and some flakes, if you go into koi sections, give a whiff or smell the flakes. Some of them might be like rice paper and stuff. Because I've worked somewhere and I was like, that is rice paper. You can smell it. And if you take a pinch of it, it tastes of rice paper too.
Bloody hell. It's feeding them rice, basically. Processed rice.
Next question we've had is from Stephen. He'd like to know, what are your thoughts on freeze-dried foods like krill, tubifix, and brine shrimp?
I'm not always entirely sure. I do use them because I think it's easy. It's quite easy to use, and you can sort of put it to the front and the fish will feed on it. I don't think it's bad in nutrition. Obviously, it's not breaking down the nutrition. It just tends to float. And if anything's at the bottom, it's not really going to get it. And sometimes it'll float for like a day. So it might not be always the best to use.
Because especially those tubifix little square cubes you put in, they can hang around for a long time if they don't get smashed, eh? And they just light, they're all floating around, they're really light, you know.
And then the fish don't really eat them after a certain point. Like, I have got freeze-dried foods, and the only ones I'll probably use again is the tubifix. But then I don't really buy it in stores. I buy it online. So I haven't always looked for the full selection.
So I guess for someone who's a beginner and they want to choose some good food for their fish, it's quite hard, isn't it? Like, if you just go into a shop, and I know when I started out, I used to just be the shiniest packet with a picture of the fish that I was trying to feed on the front. I just grabbed it, right?
I think
for that fish, right?
Yeah, I think most of us do it. I always used to do that. I don't know why I kind of switched. I used to get all sorts of different pleco foods as well. And I actually still have quite a few. One I had for like 3 years because I bought it and then I was like, actually, I'm only going to feed what I can stand by and not just have it there. But it is difficult, and it'd be nice for brands, particularly, to kind of add different ingredients, change the ingredients. There must be cheap alternatives, but I guess unless people are pushing for it, there's not going to be, because people are always wanting at the moment those brands that aren't offering anything different.
I know. Just last week I bought some food off one of our online things that is very popular in New Zealand because it's very, very cheap. And they'd listed the ingredients in the auction on Trade Me, and it sounded like it could be okay. But then when it showed up, they'd actually listed the ingredients out of order. So yes, it did have all that stuff in it, but the main ingredients were just flour, corn, starch, and yeast or something. It was just a terrible, terrible food.
Some brands don't even list their ingredients on anything, so you have to wait to see the product. And then there's So I've got somewhere. Oh, it's not. It might be New Life Spectrum. It's something. Just quickly check. This one. So New Life Spectrum, the Algivore one is really good. So this is meant to be the version of Algae Max we can get, but this one's mostly fish meal and cereals. But I think in other countries you get the one with mostly algae, which would be much better because my fish won't touch these either because it's mostly fish meal. But I ordered it. I was like, I want to try the one because it's a lot more affordable.
Did you just say that different countries have a different formula for the same product? Is that what I heard?
Think
or
so, because when I look online for the Algamax one, which is meant to be the same as the water stable one, it has more algae, and the first 5 ingredients are algae, but this one is whole fish, cereals, and then like 4 algae.
All right, so. Have you got the algae? Have you got the algae mix wafers? Have you got this one? Can you see it?
No, that's the one I thought. So I don't know if it's the same thing, just different branding. Or
this one here's first ingredient is algae.
Yeah.
So it's algae, chloria seaweed, ultra seaweed, red seaweed kelp.
But it's really difficult to get this here anyway. I had to order it specifically from a supplier, and I think they only ordered like a limited batch. So I would recommend Algae Max, but obviously it's always worth looking at ingredients anyway, just in case, because those you end up with. Yeah,
because I feed a lot of New Life Spectrum as well in my fish room.
And some fishes like just won't touch certain foods anyway. It can be a bit of an art to get certain fishes to eat, and some will just starve themselves. So the gold nuggets and stuff, which I've got in here, which won't come out really, apart from she's out there, but she's behind me. They won't touch it. They won't touch a lot of foods, and quite a few plecos will just starve themselves.
They won't. Would they starve themselves to death, you reckon?
Yeah. Like I've had fish in quarantine for I think maximum 2-3 months because they wouldn't eat.
Wow.
And then some just never do. But then I found that Rapashi solves it, but then working in a store is not the most affordable to use for your own like store fish. And
then if it's in a store and you're selling it, are you just setting the customer up who buys it to not be able to feed it, right?
Yeah, and a lot of stores don't like. There's no physical stores that stock stuff like Rapashi.
Oh, really?
Only reptile stores, and then for a lot of ducks, there's not much variation you're getting in stores, and it's got worse. I think depends on the store. Some independents are doing really well with stocking and variation, but some I'm only seeing like the same few brands.
And it's probably the one they get the cheapest price from or the most kickbacks from, and they just sell it because most of it's the same anyway, isn't it? Really, I mean.
Well, yeah, especially
the packeted food, the dry foods.
And it does depend on the packaging as well. Sometimes if they're not the fanciest packaging, they don't always want to stock it. But packaging does sell, and there's some really nice packaging out there.
Exactly, yeah. And one of the foods that I love to hate is the most attractive looking packaging in the world, the Hakari that I hate, you know. I don't know if you get
they do a really good job with their packaging,
I just think that what I'd like to see is it's just a random idea that I want to see fish foods do stuff, you know, like fancy beer, really nice beer cans. I want to see fish foods do like artwork, something that I can like collect. I just think that'd be really cool.
That'd be cool, yeah.
Yeah, there's a full, not really an underground scene, but a full scene of like burger restaurants and, you know, small distillery brewers doing that with that full impact labeling. Yeah, that would be quite
getting a bit of a community behind it, eh?
Like that sort of thing.
Yeah,
like fish packaging like that. I've got like a few. I don't even drink beer, but there's some really cool packaging. And I'm like, why can't then I can collect fish food packaging? other than having them for storage and stuff, which I should throw away quite a few. But
Yeah. I'm guilty of having a whole bunch of NLS buckets lying around from when they used to come in buckets.
But
buckets are useful.
you'll need
though.
it one day. You'll need it one day. Who knows when you're going to need it?
Salt
Yeah.
buckets
I
are
thought
the
Ryan was
best.
I thought Ryan
Okay.
was about to say he's guilty for having crates and crates of craft beer cans lying around.
Standard.
I wish. After the
I
wedding,
think
maybe.
salt buckets are the thing that you got to keep them, because you never know when you might not have anything to do with salt again, and then where are you going to get 20-litre free buckets?
Yeah.
I'll probably walk down to Bunnings and spend $6 and get one with a lid, so we should be okay.
Yeah, we buy them. I use hardware store buckets mainly, but yeah, marine buckets are good too.
I think in the UK, I don't know whether it's elsewhere, but a lot of places like aquarium people are having square buckets,
Oh yeah.
like for catching fishes, which I think is quite useful. I've got one, but that's something we need more of, I think, as a hobby.
Melissa would like to know, once opened, how long does it last? I'm assuming she's referring to fish food in general.
I'm not entirely sure. I think most of them will have an expiry date. Like this is 2027. But generally, I would be a bit careful after maybe a year or so. Some foods go off quicker than others, because some ingredients do. Like I went through my ingredient bag and I can say that some were definitely off. Like what was meant to be a powder was more of a gel in one thing.
I find with the fish food, you use the smell test, right? You know when it's gone funky because it stinks.
Yeah, and if it's early in the morning or late at night and you open the fish food, like there's Vitalis, which I don't think you get there, but they're like slightly moist pellets.
Yeah,
and I opened it and there was things moving around in it. I was like, and I've been using this for
free
a
live food.
while.
Yeah, actually, I've had the same thing with a container of food that was open for a while, and it was, what are these weird? Yep, no, I've been there as well. Don't worry.
Probably springtails. They're probably harmless, but then also the nutrition goes down the longer it's been open.
And if you've got bulk food, you can freeze it too.
Yes, or put it in the fridge. At the university, we just have all the fish food just goes straight in the fridge, whether it's dry or
obviously sealed in a sealed container so it doesn't get moist. But yeah, you can chuck it in the fridge or the freezer.
Yeah, you don't really want to leave packets open. I've got I probably won't use them again like this, which is probably a bad idea just to leave it like that. But also I'm lazy with it.
Yeah, it's going to go stale, eh?
Yeah, well, I'm not eating it, so I don't know if it will be stale, but I probably won't use it anyway. But I just have so much. It's kind of useful to have extra food as well. If you got anything like live foods. Also, I feed any fish food I don't really use to African land snails.
I thought you were
So I
going
guess
to
we
say
had isopods.
You could chuck them in your
Nearly
white
made
culture as well, or your worms will eat them.
Yeah, or I guess earthworms. I've got some earthworms that.
I feed a lot of my older expired stuff out into my whiteworm. Well, no, it's crashed. I don't. But I was feeding into my whiteworm colony as well. Just not waste. There's no point of getting rid of it, and they'll supply food for my fish at the same time.
Yeah, I think there's something in feeding feeder things good diets, but then also you don't want it to go to waste. Which is why like African land snails are quite good. Not that I have anything that will eat them. I did give a load to this girl who had a Mabu puffer, an adult Mabu. I was like, have them because they breed.
And have you used microworms before? Do you like them? What do you think about microworms?
I've never used them. I don't like worms particularly. I've got a phobia of them, so I try and avoid them. But I did have a jar of black worms. I was going to try and make a proper culture. I've only got earthworms because I've got a zebra / tiger knife fish, and here eat small worms, and then my spiny eel here eat worms as well. So they're just earthworms that I just feed them the baby ones, even though Neil the eel will eat a good size one because he's just fat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what else we can ask about food. And also, we had a giveaway we need to announce that I don't actually think we even agreed how it's going to work. So Cam, tell us how that's going to work.
I actually believe that this is Matt's baby now, so it's
Matt,
all on him.
how
I think I might have teased the code word yesterday in one of my videos, but Matt,
I haven't even watched that video yet.
Well, I've told you what the code word is, so get amongst it.
Did you tell us something?
How are the did we land on a? So you've got to mention the code word and tag a friend in the post.
Yeah, I think so. It's your baby. You roll with it.
Whoa, okay.
I'm not throwing you under the bus or anything here.
Passing it on to
Let's pass it on to the new guy. Jeez.
All right. So how it's going to work is Matt's going to explain it. Go.
So we're going to put a post up, or there is already a post up. So win a voucher from your favorite local fish store. On that post, Ryan's about to give you a code word. You have to comment the code word and then tag your friends in there. Each comment is a separate entry. Yeah, you figure out the code word between the two of you. And so this is open to anyone that we can get a voucher for. So if you're in the States, if you're in the UK, Australia, as long as we can get a voucher online, then we will sort that out for you.
And our preference is to support a bit of a local ma and pa store over a big, massive chain store, but it is your choice. So, bear that in mind.
You can comment in either the YouTube video replay or on the Facebook page.
Cam, can you check the private chat and just confirm with me? Because I don't know what it was. But anyway, which one?
Either. I don't mind. Either of them are quite amusing. I think the first one's probably the funniest, but whatever works.
Again, why am I getting thrown under the bus?
It's going to be find Matt a date. That's the words you have to use to be eligible for the prize. And we'll put Matt out there as the fish.
I feel like I'm being trafficked.
Trafficked.
Well, you kind of are a little bit.
You're being groomed.
Yeah.
We'll put you forward as our fish bachelor of the year, fetchular of the year.
Ideally, you'd also follow the Facebook page and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you could. But yeah, we're pretty much just winging it here. We had a robust conversation, then we stopped talking about it, and now we're right here. So,
and that will be announced next Wednesday. I'm correct, or this Wednesday, I guess. Wednesday whatever. In 7 days, 14th, Wednesday the 14th. So that gives people a chance when this goes out on Spotify to actually enter as well, because it goes out on Sunday.
Correct.
Because not everyone watches the live.
Correct.
And Jason was hitting me up asking if I was a pet store and if I could give him a voucher if he won, because he wants to get fish off me.
Yeah, but you don't want a voucher from Ryan because you'll give it back to him and then you'll never get the fish. So.
Yeah. 6 months maybe.
Yeah. So recap, because there's a couple of people who have missed what's happening.
Okay.
Comment on today's podcast. Can either be Facebook, Spotify, YouTube. Code word is find Matt a date, and then tag your friends. Each comment is a separate entry, and the winner will be drawn live next Wednesday.
There we go. And it'll be the prize will be a voucher from any shop. We're going to try and do it international if we can buy a shop by a credit card overseas somewhere. And the preference is to support a small local store if possible. So there you go. And maybe we'll find Matt a date. Helen has already expressed interest in a Toy Boy arrangement. So maybe that can happen.
There used to be a Facebook group, so probably still is for that sort of thing, for fish keepers.
Actually,
really?
They used
Awesome.
back in 2017, 16, they definitely was. They probably still exist.
I guess that'll be a horrendous thing if you got two obsessed fish keepers together, wouldn't it? There has to
fantastic.
be one that's not into it to stop it, to limit the
It'd
disease.
just be out of control.
Yeah.
I'm bad enough by myself.
Yeah.
Fishy point taste.
All right. Well, I think that's us. Thank you, Rebecca, for coming along. I've actually really enjoyed it and asking you
Thank
questions
you.
that weren't related to the topic at all. And we did get some on topic chat. So I know I found it interesting from a scientific point of view to hear that stuff like that's actually happening. I don't know if it's happening in New Zealand, but it's cool to hear that people are actually studying stuff and learning about stuff and publishing stuff. What is next week's topic? Okay.
Next week we're going to be talking about frontosa, which is like the only decent Asian squid ever.
Is
This
this
is
going to
a
be one of those ones where the topic is frontosa and we'll avoid the topic?
We've already
Seeing
talked
as we
about
spoke about
frontosa a
frontosas.
lot. We've talked
Yeah.
about frontosa a lot. But
this has
I
come
like
from when we had a topic of American cichlids. One of our watchers said that we spent the whole time talking about frontosa, so I figured that we should probably have a whole dedicated episode on frontosa.
And we'll talk about American cichlids there.
Yeah.
Well,
The
they
Yeah,
are
we
American cichlid one, the
interesting.
frontosa one.
Yeah. Cool.
So you've got a comment here, Rebecca. Thanks for sharing. For a change, we get some intelligent info. So there you go.
Yeah, it's valid. It's very
Yeah,
valid.
I agree. It's not hard to be more intelligent than us, but yeah. Maybe we'll get Rebecca back on a different one if we get into. Should have got her on the scientific name one that we knew nothing about and we just bullshitted our way through. That would have been useful, eh? Because we had no idea. But anyway, see you guys later and hope we all have a wonderful day and Rebecca has a wonderful night.
Thank
Sure.
you.
All
Thank you very much.
See you guys.
See you later.